I'm not going to win any state fair records with these, but these are some pretty big onions here, so I'm pretty happy with this year's harvest. Hey everybody, we're here in my backyard and it's time to harvest these onions. These are onions that I got from Stark Brothers earlier this spring. When you buy them, they'll come really thin, like little plants. They look like scallions that you get at the grocery store. And I planted them about 4 inches apart in rows about 6 to 8 inches apart here in this raised bed. And it's time to harvest, and so you'll know that it's time to harvest when the tips will start to turn brown and then most of them have fallen over. So in my case, it's time to harvest. One thing that you want to do is stop irrigating, like stop watering manually a week or two before you're ready to harvest. In our case here in Missouri, we've had a really stormy last 3 or 4 days, so the ground is still really wet, but I want to get these out of the ground anyway. But the drier they are out of the ground, the better it'll be when you're ready to start curing them. It's really not that big a deal, but ideally they'd be a little bit drier. But anyway, to harvest, in my case, this is raised bed. The soil is really soft. I don't need any tools. They'll just pull right out of the ground. But if you have harder soil or more compacted soil, you can use a shovel from the edge or a little trowel to kind of loosen up below. But in my case, you'll see that I can just kind of pull and the whole thing just comes right out. So really what I'm going to want to do is just kind of come through and pull them out, loosen the soil off as much as I can. You do not want to wash these again. You want them to stay dry during the curing process. But in my case, I mean, it really could not be any easier to harvest your onions. So I'm just going to pull a bunch of these out and then I'll throw them in the wheelbarrow and I'll take them up to the porch where I'm going to dry and cure them. All right, so we have all the onions harvested here in this wheelbarrow, and you can see over here, this was a 4 feet wide by 6 foot wide section. You can really grow a lot of onions in a small space, so that's an awesome thing about them. My wife said that she can typically cook with about this many onions in our house, probably 6 to 8 months. But the key to getting them to last that long is getting them dried and cured so that they don't rot on you. All right, so the next step, we're gonna lay these out to dry and cure, and there's a few different ways to do it. Some people will just lay them out in the grass and let them dry over a few days there. Other people will put them in if they've got like a shed or covered like open barn or whatever. In my case, I'm gonna move them up onto my deck because I have rabbits and other critters around here that will get to them if they're out in the grass. So I'm gonna move them up on the deck and we'll let them dry for a couple of days. And there's arguments for doing this different ways. Some people will say put the tops over the other rows, and that'll prevent the tops from getting sun scald. Other people will hang them and have them individually. But since I don't have a great spot for curing these things, this is how I usually do it every year, and they dry out just fine. These leaves are still a little bit wet from the rain last night, and so it's a little bit damper than I'd like to let them sit out like this. I'll probably spread them out here after lunch today, let them dry out a bit, and then I'll put them back in that arrangement. So I'll come back here in a few days and kind of check on them, and once the tops are just completely dry, then I'll come in and I'll cut them, you know, a little bit above the stem, and then I'll cut off the roots. You do want to take the roots off, that way they're not going to be prone to absorbing any moisture that's, you know, in your environment. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It really couldn't be any simpler. It's very easy to grow onions. It doesn't take much space. So to get your own onions, go to starkbros.com.